All right, x-intercept form, it's called x-intercept form because you can see the x-intercepts in the equation. So in the same way as with the other two forms, the sign of A is going to tell you what shape your graph is going to have, and the A value is going to be the same for all three forms. If you have one graph and the equation is written in the three different forms, it will have the same A value. So that value, if it's positive, it will be an upwards facing parabola. If it's negative, it will be downwards. So to find the y-intercept, just like any other graph, you make x equal to 0. So obviously A and these values will be numbers. So you'll sub that in, you'll get your y-intercept. And for the x-intercept, you don't have to do this calculation. I just wrote it here so that you can see that x1 and x2 will in fact be your x-intercepts. You know that a parabola has a quadratic graph, right? It has a quadratic equation as its equation. So if you were to factorize that, you will get two brackets, and the two values in those brackets will give you the x-intercept if you make them equal to 0. So basically the x-intercept form is actually just the standard form that's been factorized. Maybe we must just add that. So when you have a graph that's given in standard form, if you have to find the x-intercept, you would have to factorize first and then make each bracket equal to 0. If it's given in factorized form already, you can just make each bracket equal to 0 right from the start. And then you will get your two x-intercepts. But if you recognize that it is x-intercept form, you can just look at those two numbers. So I'll just do a little example here on the side. For example, if they tell you that y equals x plus 1, x minus 3, but that is the equation of the graph. If we were to multiply these brackets out, we would get a trinomial, right? We would get something that is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now we don't have to do that, okay, because we can hopefully recognize that this would be x squared, so this would be a parabola. So now if you were to find your x-intercepts here, you would say I need to make y equal to 0. So I'm going to have x plus 1, x minus 3 equal to 0. And then to solve for x there, you would have to make each bracket equal to 0. So what x value would you get from this bracket? If you made this equal to 0, you would get -1, right? So this would be x equals -1, or if you made this bracket equal to 0, you move that -3 over, you would get +3. So basically, if you're looking at the equation, x minus a number, x minus -1 is the same as x plus 1, right? This can be rewritten as x minus -1. Do we agree that x minus -1 is the same as x plus 1? Right? And x minus 3, so your x2 is 3. So those would be your two x-intercepts. If that doesn't make sense to you, you can still just make it equal to 0 and solve for x normally. Okay, so those are the three forms of a parabola equation. Now, if they asked you, if you have an equation in this form and they're asking you to write it in standard form, what would you do? You have to write it in ax squared plus bx plus c. What would you do? Multiply the brackets out. You would just FOIL them out. Okay? So this is, yeah, this doesn't really come up, but maybe you never know. Okay, it's basically just the standard form that has been factorized. That is x-intercept form. Okay, copy this note down, please. To find the equation of a parabola, they can give you different types of information, and the information that they're giving you will tell you which form to use. So if they've given you the turning point, you're going to use turning point form. I'm sure that makes sense. If they've given you the x-intercept, you're going to use x-intercept form. All right, so we're going to do an example of each of these. Once you've copied this down, we'll do an example of this third one tomorrow. Okay, so if they've given you the turning point, then you're going to use this form, which is turning point form. You're going to put the x value of the turning point there, the y value of the turning point there, but then you still need to find a. So you'll still have a variable. All right, your equation is going to stay y equals something. The x is going to stay there. We basically need to find the values of a, p, and q. P and Q are easy because those are the values of the turning point. All right, so if they've given you the turning point, you're just going to sub that in. But then to find A, they have to give you more information. They can't just give you the turning point. All right, they can't ask you to find 3 variables, but they've only given you 2 values. All right, so they'll give you the turning point and another point. You must then sub in the other point, and then that will allow you to solve for A. All right, so let's just look at this example quickly. So please just write examples. Number 1. Determine the equation of the parabola with a turning point of 1, 2 that passes through -2, 1. So they've given you the turning point and they're giving you another point. So guys, you have to know those 3 forms because it depends on, or depending on what they've given you, you're going to have to write down the correct form and use that. Okay, you can't just use one form for all types of questions, unfortunately. Okay, when you're ready, you can write down turning point form so long, just y equals a bracket x minus p squared plus q. And that is not something that appears on the matric formula sheet. All right, so even next year, you're going to have to remember that all three of the different forms. You're going to have to know them off by heart. Now, guys, the turning point, 1 is your P value and 2 is your Q value. Right? So we're going to say y is equal to a times x minus 1 squared plus 2. Remember, if the x value of your turning point is positive, then in the equation, you have to have x minus. Yeah? So if this was -1, then you would have x minus -1, which is x plus 1. Okay, so you can just always remember that whatever the sign is of the x value in the actual point, it's a different sign in the equation. Right, and guys, for that, you get your first mark. Possibly your second, they might give you a mark for writing this down, but yeah, you'll definitely get a mark for doing that. We still need to find a, all right? We can't just assume that a is 1. It might be, but a could also be something else. So we have used the turning point. We're not going to use the same point twice. All right, now we're going to take the other point that they've given us and we're going to substitute it into this equation. So please, just like what we did in grade 9 when we worked with straight lines, when we subbed a point into the straight line, you need to please just show the marker what you're doing. All right, so write down the point that you're going to sub in. And now, guys, since I'm solving for a, I'm just going to write this on the left-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to say a bracket, instead of x minus 1, what is the x value of this point? 2. So I'm going to write 2 minus 1 squared. All right, I'm substituting the x value of 2 and the y value of -1 into this equation. All right, what else was here? So it was the bracket squared, then plus 2 equals y. What is the y value of this point? -1. So you take the equation after you've subbed in the turning point and you put in the x value where you have x and the y value where you have y. Do we notice now that we only have one variable and that is a? All right, so now we can actually solve for a. What is 2 minus 1? 1. What's 1 squared? 1. So this is just a, right? This whole term, that is just a. If I move this plus 2 over to the other side, it's going to become -2. What is -1 minus 2? -3. So a is -3. You can do that in more steps if you wanted to. All right, you could have just written it as a plus 2 equals -1 and then move the plus 2 over. So now they asked for the equation, so we must just write the equation down in full. So y is this, but now we know that a is -3. So -3 times x minus 1 squared plus 2. Okay, in terms of marks, you'll get a mark for substituting the point incorrectly, a mark for finding your a value, and then a mark for actually writing the equation. So this is a 4-mark question. Okay, any questions now on this one? Okay, example 2. Okay, now guys, in this case, they're just giving us points. They're not telling us which points they are. All right, so we do need to just look at the points. In the previous question, they said one of them was the turning point, and then we had another point. If we're looking at these first 2 points that they've given us, do we notice that they both have a y value of 0? If you had to think of the Cartesian plane, where would these 2 points lie? On the x-axis, right? So this point 2, 0 is at 2 on the x-axis because it has an x value of 2 but a y value of 0. This point is on -4 or at -4 rather on the x-axis. All right. So guys, because these two y values are 0, that should tell you that these are x-intercepts. Right? These are the two x-intercepts of the graph. They didn't tell us that, but we need to know. We need to notice that. All right, so these are the x-intercepts of the graph. If they've given us the x-intercepts, we're going to use x-intercept forms. At the very least, you guys can just put your phones away while I'm actually speaking. That would be lovely. I mean, at the very least. Okay, so we write down the x-intercept form. Two is x1 and -4 is x2. All right. Our first x-intercept, it also doesn't matter what order you put them in, it's fine, all right? But the first one that's written there is 2, that is x1. The actual value of the x-intercept. -4 is x2. So I'm going to leave the a as it is, x minus 2. That's going to be your first bracket. Second bracket, x minus -4. What does that give me? What's a negative times a negative? Positive. So this is going to be x plus 4. Guys, does it make sense that if you were to make this equal to 0, you could divide the a on the other side, which will just make it 0. And then if you make each of these brackets equal to 0, if you say x minus 2 equals 0, you're going to get 2. Right? If you say x plus 4 equal to 0, you're going to get -4. Okay? So also for these ones, you change the signs. All right. Now we need to get our a value still. Just like in the previous one, we're now going to substitute the third point that they gave us, which is 4, 8. Right? And that will allow us to solve for a. I always tell my classes, when in doubt, sub in a point. All right? Usually substituting a point, if you don't know what to do next, will allow you to solve for the variable that's left. Okay, again, because a is here, I want to solve for a. I'm going to write this on the left-hand side. So I'm going to do a. Now it's x minus 2, but the x value of this point is 4. So I'm going to write 4 minus 2. Second bracket is x plus 4, but my x value of this point is 4. So I'm going to write 4 plus 4. That is equal to y. What is the y value of this point? 8. So you put the x value of the point everywhere where you have an x in your equation, and you put the y value on the other side. And now again, we see that a is the only variable. This first bracket was 4 minus 2. 2. What's 4 plus 4? 8. 2 times 8 is 16. So this is 16a equal to 8. To get the 16 on the other side, what must I do? I'm going to divide, hey? What's 8 divided by 16? A half. So a is positive a half. Therefore, y is equal to a half times x minus 2 times x plus 4. And you can leave your answer like that, guys. Sometimes they'll say, write your answer in standard form, in which case we'll have to FOIL the brackets out and then multiply a half as well. All right, but we can practice going from one form to the next tomorrow. All right, I'm giving you 2 questions for homework. Please write it down. Number 1.1 is an x-intercept question and 2.1 is a turning point question. So you are practicing exactly what we did now in these 2 examples. All right, you can go.